All right, local swell tracker, Saturday the 15th, middle of March, spring break time, and time for the local swell tracker. Okay, just taking a look at why we saw the swells that we saw this week from the west is this culprit right out here. Now, it was a complex mix of low pressures with a fast easterly track thanks to the jet and that big high pressure sitting right here, spinning clockwise, and builds especially by this weekend and Sunday, Monday, whipping up some gale warning level winds and high surf advisory level waves. Clicking in the animation, you can see that guy, again, a mix of fetches within that, and that's why the swells have a broad spectrum and broad angles, and if you add in this mix of direction and high winds, you get storm surf with very few takers. Clicking in the animation further, we get a little guy that pops up here to our north-northwest, and this guy will add in some north-northwest swell reinforcement on Monday. Nothing big, but maybe 4 to 6. There's this huge high pressure moving into the area. The pressure gradient between that high and this low are the cause for the northeasterly tilt to the winds and the lower temperatures, and that high pressure is moving east and will be weakening along with the winds, therefore, by Wednesday, and our weather normalizing. And then we get some storms up here off the Kurils, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I wanted to do a little bit of hindcasting for you. All right, rolling the animations. Here we go. Here comes that big high, and here's the low pressure that brought us in our west-northwest to northwest wave. There's that new low up here by the Kuril Islands. Starting up the animations, you can see everything has an easterly track and stays fairly far away from us, except for the northeasterly winds. But that's why we are no longer in any warning level swell scenario as we head into spring. So again, a very easterly track, distant storms keeping up mostly below advisory levels. Down under, it's fairly quiet. No longer on the charts is the storm that created the last south to south-southwest event that we saw last week, peaking at 3 feet. These models only go back about 7 days, and it takes about 6 to 7 days for these events to get up to us, so they have disappeared. But I will start the animations and show you some fetches that do kick in for early this week, especially here right about now. You can see that fetch right here. That'll be pumping us up to 3 feet Wednesday, starting to fill in possibly Tuesday with some 14 seconds. There's a long fetch on her, and so the event should last a decent amount of time. There's the big high pressure, and the lows tracking zonally are west to east. So we don't see anything with a pure meridional track that we like towards us. Here's today's models. Much better view. The last was showing the surface winds, and this is what results. Sea heights here of about 30 feet, and this guy is what will be bringing us up some waves again middle of next week into Saturday. We do have some cyclones near Fiji moving down. We will not see anything because the winds are not really, the track of the storms are just the opposite way that we like them, and that really weakens the swell potential, although we will see some background long period energy from those two cyclones that we saw in the last 10 days. Alrighty, here's today's jet stream. There's the big high pressure. You can see the blue areas, and it's bouncing the jet stream up and over it and then dipping down on top of us. That pressure gradient, as I was saying, is what is creating the extra high winds up to 40 miles per hour, or 40 knots actually, which is about 45 miles per hour in the windiest locations. Pretty rare to see the winds like this. Sunday and Monday will be the peak of the swell from these winds. We'll click in the animation. You can see the jet is coming off of Japan. It does break up here in a few days. That high pressure weakens and spreads out. And then in the long haul, the jet looks like it's going to try to come back together off of Japan once again and hopefully enhance some surface level low pressures. All right, down under you can see it, the jet stream way down by the Ross Ice Shelf, and then it begins its equatorial bound flow, steering that one system that I was pointing out right there. And then we go into no man's land or no surf land for the next 7 days. After this next swell coming up Wednesday through next Saturday, we'll go quiet until further notice. The North Shore will still be dominating at this time. All right, the surface charts, hand-drawn for you. That big high pressure moving east quickly. That low pressure over here. That pressure gradient in between. There's a weak front moving down the island chain right now, creating some dampness in the air for sure, blown sideways by some of those gusts on the winds. That low pressure bringing us in up here by the Kurils will be bringing us up the middle of next week. But the high pressure is definitely the dominant feature, creating the wind and wind waves. All right, let's go from the surface to the upper region, showing the water vapor loops, features 20,000 feet and up. The brown region showing the drier sinking air from that big high pressure over here. That storm heading off to the northwest coast. There's that front in the upper levels moving down the island chain, as I was saying. Here's another view of it. You can see the way the clouds disperse here is very indicative of that high pressure. We do have a lot of storm cloudiness to the southeast of the Big Island, and the worst of the weather here will be Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and things start to look better by Tuesday, and the trade winds should be back to normal by Wednesday. Easy to see that northerly to northeasterly tilt to the clouds being pushed by those trades. And as I said, a lot of the rain to the southeast of the Big Island here, and this even shows that northeasterly tilt to the winds, and a lot of rain spilling over to the leeward shores too, not at all confined to just windward and Mauka. And one last look here from a very cool animation. That big high pressure going counterclockwise, the low pressure's counterclockwise. The scenario will not last. Things are moving from east to west rather rapidly. And there you go. We'll see you out in the lineup and back here next weekend. Aloha.